Welcome to our second webinar in our 2021 conversation series. Many of you joined us for a conversation with Will Berger on February 21st. Welcome back, if that's the case. I'm Mike Rupert, President and Events Chair of the Richard Wagner Society of the Upper Midwest here in Minneapolis. I'd also like to welcome all of you for whom this is your first experience with us. And I hope you'll consider becoming a member. I know we have about 50% members, 50% non-members on our Zoom session today, so that's wonderful. We have an amazing, wonderful guest tonight lurking behind our virtual curtain. She will join us momentarily. In the meantime, I do have a little bit of housekeeping that I'd like to go through with you. It's primarily related to how this session is going to work. But the agenda for today is, it's going to be a very exciting hour. We have our guest, Christine Goerke. After I've introduced her, Christine and I will have a discussion for probably about 20 minutes total. That'll leave about close to half of the hour for questions and answers. At that point, you'll have the opportunity to interact directly with Christine. You can ask her any questions you like. She said, bring them on. And you can even offer her any moving advice or cooking and baking tips if you like. I'll then also close out our session with just a few more housekeeping items. Those are important though, so please do hang on after the Q&A so that we have a chance to go through those. Now, for questions and comments today, in the past with these virtual sessions, what we've done is we have had you type your question into the chat, and then I did my best to monitor the chat and ask your question on your behalf of our guest or guests, as in the case of the last session. This time, I'd like for us to try making it more interactive so that you can interact directly with Christine. So you're able to continue as we have in the past if you prefer. If you'd like to send a question through chat, go right ahead, send a question to me. Obviously, if you wish to remain anonymous, you'll do it through chat, because the other way I'm going to tell you about is going to be something that would reveal who you are, or at least reveal who you're logged in as. If you prefer to talk directly with us, then what you can do is use the raise hand feature. And the raise hand feature is in the reactions, it's behind the reactions button or icon at the bottom of your screen. So if you tap reactions, you'll see that the raise hand bar is the bar at the very bottom. It's the largest icon or button of the possible reactions. And if you tap that button once, your virtual hand will be raised, and you'll see it if you have the participants listed on your screen. You'll see next to your name a little hand icon. That means that you've raised your hand and would like to be able to speak. And I'll monitor that, and as I see hands getting raised, I'll call on you in turn, unless it's complete and utter chaos, in which case I'll think of some other way to identify people in some order so that we can get through everyone's questions. I'm hoping we'll be able to get through all of your questions, comments, baking tips, etc. by the end of the session. One important thing, be careful when you tap the raise hand button. If you tap it twice, it'll raise your hand and then lower your hand. So it's a toggle. Tap it once, your hand goes up, tap it again, your hand goes down. So just be aware of that. When you're done, once I've called on you, you can certainly, of course, lower your hand. If you've never used the raised hand feature before, you can go ahead and give it a quick try right now if you haven't already done so. Just remember to lower your hand after you've tried it out so that I don't think you have a question when you don't actually have a question yet. And again, as I said, I'll do my best to call on you in order. I'll ask you to unmute your device when it's your turn to ask a question. When you're done, please remember, I'll try to remind you as well, but please remember to mute yourself so we don't have any unwanted background noise, cats crying, dogs, sirens, that sort of thing. If you prefer to be anonymous with your question, again, please don't use the raise hand feature. Instead, send a message, a private message to me with your question, and I will anonymously ask your question. Make sure that I am made aware that it's anonymous, and that way only I will know that you are Regé-Jean Page from Bridgerton, or perhaps even Brendan Fraser. And that's an inside joke between me and Christine. All right, our guest tonight is an American soprano who grew up on Long Island, about an hour's drive east of the Metropolitan Opera House. She's not only a native New Yorker, but she also developed as a singer, both in college and through her early career, largely in the Empire State. Her range over her career has included singing such diverse roles as Alice Ford in Falstaff, both Donna's Anna and Elvira in Don Giovanni, the Marschallin in Rosenkavalier, the Dyer's Life in Die Frau ohne Schatten, Electra, Turandot, and in the off chance that we have any Wagner fans in the audience tonight, she has also sung Senta, Sieglinde, Elizabeth, Ortrud, and Kundry. And of course, for the past several years, she has become renowned as one of the world's leading Brunhildas. Just this past week, as though there hasn't been enough news lately, the opera world learned that she is taking on an exciting new role, working with our friend Yuval Sharon as his associate artistic director at Michigan Opera Theater. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce our guest tonight. Please join me in welcoming Helden Mommy herself, Ms. Christine Goerke.
Hi.
There she is. Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know if
I'm
that's
so
on
excited.
just surviving at this point with that list.
Those are just a few of the roles that you have sung. I tried to select a few that were a bit on the diverse side. So, but talking about your career, Christine, if you don't mind, can you give us a sense of who some of your early influences are?
Oh my goodness.
Or were, rather.
Do you know what's really funny? When I started doing this, it was largely by accident. I didn't grow up aspiring to be a singer. I didn't grow up with opera in my life. I was a music education major. I was a clarinet player. I had planned to teach high school band. And through the glories of the sight singing tests and placement exams, we slowly found out that, in fact, I could make some noises that weren't so bad without my clarinet, because apparently my clarinet playing was horrible. So this turned out really well for everybody. But I didn't really pay too much attention growing up, I'll be honest. And I found that I could do this, and I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I didn't start to really listen to singers until this became apparent that this was something that I could pursue for a living, which is completely the backwards way to go about this. But I will tell you that I was really fascinated by singing actresses. So the voices that I heard the story in their sound. I was lucky enough to work very early on when I was in the training program at the Met. 20, just turning 25. I did my debut there was Ghost of Versailles by Corigliano, and Teresa Stratas was singing Marie Antoinette. Now this has nothing to do with Wagner, but if there was ever a lady who chewed scenery and created a story with her sound, it was that one. Okay, also Callas, but I was not around for that. So to me, those were the kind of voices. There was something about the storytelling of it all, which segues beautifully into where I have found myself now, of course, because, you know, the through composed things, everything is about the storytelling. Everything is about color and dimension. And
Mm,
so in a way, it, even at the very beginning, it sort of led me to where I am now.
mm. But did you ever get the privilege of attending band camp?
Oh my gosh, of course. I was on Long Island. As you said, you did very well. Very nice. I was the captain of the color guard because nobody wants to see you marching with a bass clarinet. So I was the captain of the flag line, which was very cool. Unless you were on kick line, and then we were not cool. So we did band camp. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I actually really enjoyed. I was part of Drum Corps International for a hot second too. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Wow. A little bird told me that you're hosting Glimmerglass Festival's virtual gala this year.
I am on
What
April
is your
7th.
on April 7th? With it, this was a shameless plug opportunity. I could foresee it. Cheska did not make me promise that, but I do feel obligated. So, what is your connection to Glimmerglass?
It's a very strong and deep
For those who don't know,
connection.
Glimmerglass, yeah. For those who don't know, Glimmerglass is in Cooperstown, New York, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is, on the shores of Lake Otsego in a beautiful state park. And it's a wonderful summer festival.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And my very first summer training program was at Glimmerglass, and I auditioned when I was 22, and I was accepted. And that summer, I had just arrived and I turned 23. And they had already given me the understudy for Fiordiligi, and I did a lot of their I did the chorus work there as well. We did a scenes program. But at the time, Paul Kellogg was running the festival, and he went on to run New York City Opera. But he picked up the phone and called the Metropolitan Opera that year and said, "You need to hear this girl." I didn't know any of this until after the fact, but they said, okay. And I had an audition. And normally, the usual way that this happens is the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions. Usually the winners from there are people that are considered to be in the Young Artist program at the Met, and that's how it always functioned. But there were always sort of the stragglers who came in the back door. And that year, the back door couple were me and Anthony Griffey. And we had the two of us held each other's hands the entire time because we felt like, you know, the kids who rolled in from the alley who didn't belong. But yeah, I was so grateful, and I returned to Glimmerglass several times. My sort of breakout as a young singer was a production of Iphigénie en Tauride. And in fact, it was the very first time that I worked with a director that has been not only a great influence in my life, but someone who has become a friend. Obviously, since I'm hosting her gala, Francesca Zambello.
Great, great. And the gala is on
April 7th.
It's April 7th, and it's a virtual gala. Gala.
It's both.
So, how do they pronounce it on
any way they like, as long as you
Island?
donate, it's fine. You can say whatever you want, and we'll say that's right.
You can get more information from glimmerglass.org, but there's a wonderful program, correct?
Yes,
and
it's great. And it's also in your pajamas. You've been invited to come in your pajamas.
Right, it's a pajama party.
Lois
right?
likes pajama party. I actually ordered a unicorn onesie because they told me I could. We had a rehearsal today. You think I'm kidding? I'm all ready.
That's wonderful. So like several other, enough of the shameless plug, Mike, like several others on our Zoom session, I first saw you as the dyer's wife in the Met, and you don't know this, but I'm telling you now, in the Met production of Die Frauen Schatten in 2013. And I believe, I didn't know it at the time, but I actually attended a Wagner Society event, Wagner Society of New York, and you were on a panel.
Yep.
The following day after the production, along with, I believe it was the conductor, the director, and one of the other principals, I think.
Yeah, I think
if I remember correctly.
All four of the
but I
principals
remember
showed up.
Yeah, and it was really a great panel. But that was your first dramatic soprano role, is that correct? Or first major appearance on stage in a dramatic soprano role?
It depends on which company asks that question. If the Met asks that question, of course, yes,
Okay.
that's what it was. You know, I mean,
Okay.
every company wants to own, you know, this is the big coming out, this is your big breakout role.
Yeah,
It was a
true.
huge thing
Mhm.
for me. You know, I had a very public change of repertoire, and it's not that it was unexpected, you know? I mean, you don't start out singing Handel and the next day wake up and say, "Well, I guess it's time for Strauss and Wagner. Let's go." You know, there's a time when things, you know, you take a break, you retool, you figure it out, and you move forward into what's next. But it was very rocky for a while, and I nearly quit. And I'm glad I stuck it out. And
Oh,
when I went out for the curtain call for that one, um, I wasn't expecting what happened at all. I was so pleased I made it through Frau in one piece, and my chords were still in my throat. I was like, winning, yay! I'm not bleeding, yahoo! But I went out for the curtain call, and the sound of the ovation literally knocked me backwards. And
oh wow.
I'm not really one to sort of brag about stuff like that, but I only mention it because I started crying and I walked off stage, and one of the artistic liaisons that has been a friend since I was 24 years old at the Met in the Young Artist Program was standing there, and she threw her arms around me. And I remember the only thing that I could manage to say to her is, "No one's going to ask if I'm broken anymore." So it was a very big deal.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Wow. Wow. I mean, it was very, very impressive. And one of the questions that I have for you is, and it's only slightly tongue in cheek, actually. Do cast members have as much difficulty making sense of that opera as the audience members often do?
Okay, so there's so
It's a
many
challenging,
operas
it's a
that make
challenging opera.
it is challenging, but you know, if you look at it, I always try to explain it to folks. They're like, "What exactly is this about?" I'm like, "Well, how much time do you have?" If you think about it in a way, think of it like Strauss's version of the Magic Flute. I mean, how much sense does that opera make? Sorry,
True.
Mozart, awesome
True.
music, but what? So, I mean, you know, it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale, and you try to take
Okay.
away the information that you can. Now, to me, there's always a necessity with any opera, whether it is rather straightforward and you can make sense of it. Boy falls in love with girl, girl has to marry somebody else. That doesn't work out. Boy gets thrown in jail for murdering guy, girl kills herself. Okay. I just made that up. I think it might have been Romeo and Juliet. I don't even know. But, you know, there's that. And then there's something like Frau. And so the only way you can look at something like that is through the eyes of your character. So if I'm the Empress, you know, now I'm just thinking about the fact that I have given up so much, and the one thing that I want's out of my reach, and what am I willing to give to have what I want? That seems like a really watered down version of it, but every one of us has desperately wanted something where we've had to examine exactly what are we willing to do to get it. You know, and it's a struggle sometimes, because sometimes we're offered something and it would mean that we'd have to do something that we don't love. Dyer's wife, this is somebody who has found herself in a situation that is not what she thought it was going to be at all, and is not content with her life, and just is desperate to find a way out. And until she finds out that, in fact, it's what she wanted the whole time. God knows we have all been in a situation where we think, I have got to get out of this. And the minute we're out, we're like, oh no, I actually really missed this. What did I do? So, I mean, it seems like these are really watered down ways of thinking of things, but for the really crazy operas, it can be broken down to something really simple and really relatable. And my job is to find that. So hopefully I can relate that to people sitting in the audience.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's, you know, that for me personally, I've only seen it on stage twice, and that production lulled me into a false sense of security, because I actually felt that I understood it.
Oh,
then
well,
I saw it. I was in I was in Berlin for the Deutsche Oper, the very final subway ring, the tunnel ring. I had not seen it. It was on my list So some friends and I went out to Berlin to see that, and we saw at Staatsoper, in their temporary digs, we saw a production of Frau, and I do know some German, but I was actually not able to follow it. So anyway, however, it was worth it for the Ring. It was really worth it. It was a great production. Speaking of Ring productions, do you have a favorite Ring production? Whether you've been in it or performed in it or not?
Oh gosh. I have to be the dorkiest kid ever and say the Schenk is my favorite because I mean it was my first one that I ever saw. It was the first one I ever did. I was third Norn in that one before it went away. And I did that twice before it was retired. And you know, I mean it's a bit like the Seferelli Turandot.
Were you in the final cycles?
I was not.
Were you in the final cycles?
No, I was not.
You were not. Okay.
No, I was off
like
trying to figure out everything else. Yeah. But
Okay.
I did third Norn twice, and you know, it was dusty and moldy and falling apart and a hot mess on stage, and it doesn't matter because from the other side of the pit it was, I know, but it was just magic. It was just magic, you know.
No, I did the backstage tour, and it was literally duct taped together when we did the backstage tour. It was, but it was, and I asked the tour guide, I said, the docent, I said, is there any chance that they'll retain this? And she said, look, it's falling apart. There's no way. It's not going to be given again.
There was always tale that it was in, you know, some containers in New Jersey somewhere, but I live in New Jersey, and if it was here, I would have found it. So
it's in there with the bodies.
Probably. At the Meadowlands, I'll go look next week.
So I've spent quite a bit of time in New Jersey myself. You sang the role of Brunhilda in Yuval Sharon's innovative take on Götterdämmerung in Detroit, Twilight Gods. And I understand also just last week that it was announced that you will be reprising that role for the Chicago Lyric next month. What can you tell us about that production? I know a number of us were dying to go, but of course it sold out in both cities instantly, and you know, you have to have a car. And what can you tell us about it?
I can tell you that whatever you just said at the end of that, hang tight. I can't tell you any more than that, but stay tuned. But the actual production of this we fondly called it Garagedämmerung, so or Parkingdämmerung, depending on who you're talking to. When I got the phone call in June of last year, and said, you know, would you have a conversation with Yuval Sharon? And I was like, yes, of course, I would love to have a conversation with Yuval Sharon. I was scheduled to do his Lohengrin at Bayreuth before everything fell apart. And so we got on the phone and we hit it off immediately. He is brilliant. He is funny and just willing to think outside of the box. And he said, so you know that the company owns the theater? And I said, I do. And I know that the company owns their parking garage, which is brilliant. He goes, about that. I said, okay. And he told me what was going on and what he was planning. And I said, great, I'm in. And he said, well, do you want to know more? And I go, no. Do you know how many companies are brave enough to try this right now, to do anything live? I cannot applaud this company any more than I am right now. I am absolutely ready. Tell me when you need me there. And
wonderful.
It started to feel stranger and stranger as we went through. But then the very first time cars came through, and you know, the windows are rolled up the way that it functions for safety, and we're wearing microphones so that you can hear through the radio, but we're literally 2 feet away from folks in the cars. And we're able to walk right up and down next to folks, and it changes slightly every time. But I saw everything from people sobbing to people giggling to people holding up signs and having their babies on their lap and bouncing and waving and cheering. And it was the most heartening thing that I had ever seen. And I came home exhausted after the first time because, you know, it's an 8-minute, my part of it is an 8-minute segment of the immolation scene 14 times. So I was wiped out after the first one of those, and I came home exhausted, and I have family there, and they said, how did it go? And I said, So good. So good. The arts are essential. I knew that they were, but I saw today that they were. And the connection is not broken. So I can't wait to get back in
Good,
front of people. I just can't. I miss it as much as
good,
everyone else does.
good. Yeah. So while you were talking, someone asked the question, just to clarify, it's Yuval Sharon, Yuval Sharon,
Mhm.
and he is known for site-specific, very innovative site-specific opera, particularly in LA. He founded a company called The Industry in
That's
LA.
right.
I was living in LA during the time that he was really rising to prominence, and he did. Um, I have one of the great artistic regrets of my life is
Uh-oh.
that I did not go to see War of the Worlds when he did War of the Worlds with the LA Phil, and I was even working there at the
Oh
LA
dear.
Phil at the time, and I didn't go. I can't remember what my conflict was, but when I read the reviews, I was just, and so this, we don't have time to get into it, but it was really amazing from what I heard. And when I heard that he was doing a version of Götterdämmerung in a parking garage, I thought, well, that's typical Yuval Sharon. And
Well,
I
it was
and I
also
know
so
him
innovative
from
and so
he
smart, because he made the
yeah.
most out of something that was an asset to the company. And how many companies were offering live or anything at that moment? It was a huge, huge leap, and it paid off in spades. It was just incredible that he took that chance.
Well, I did read, and maybe this is something that wasn't uh, initially for public knowledge, but I did read somewhere that there will be a filmed version. I think I read it on the Chicago Lyrics website that it's being filmed and that it will be available to the public for free this summer. So free experience of the Twilight Gods,
Hmm.
Twilight Poland Gods. Um, do you find it, I've got just a couple more questions and then we'll turn it over to the audience. Do you find it difficult to perform Wagnerian roles? We had talked about this a while ago, in that Wagner is a controversial figure, and there are some relatively unseemly aspects of his character and his legacy, including things that perhaps are well, the connection to the Nazis. Obviously, he wasn't alive when the Nazis were in power, but they co-opted Wagner. Do you find any aspect of performing Wagner difficult because of that, or do you find ways? Um, how do you find value in the art that he produced when some of the aspects of him are unsavory?
Right. So this is a two-part answer, actually. So the first part of the answer is I doubt you could come up with one artist, one composer, anyone, that if you didn't look at them personally, you would not find things about them that you found distasteful, that you found wrong.
Mhm.
Artists are imperfect people. And whether this is naive or not, I believe that that kind of gift comes through us, not from us. Um, so the art that is created, that's up to us to decide whether or not we can use it to make to lift people up in a way. I don't have any problem separating the man from the music and the man from the storytelling. Um, I don't pretend for a hot second that I it's not like I would have sidled up and been his best friend for the reason I'm about to mention.
Mhm.
Now, if anybody knows anything about German names, I didn't apparently. Surprise! 3 years ago, while doing my ancestry, turns out, how did I miss this? My father's family, in fact, went back 2 generations back. My father's family name was Klingenstein, not Catholic. So, um, turns out for me to be able to stand on the stage at Bayreuth and sing this music, knowing my heritage, there is something really powerful about that. And it's empowering as well. So, to
Mm.
be honest, I not only have no problem separating it, but I choose to reclaim it.
And that's particularly relevant with regard to a certain role in the ring?
Well, the thing, this has been announced. I mean, there is, it's interesting because there is, it's not any specific role in the ring. I mean, I'm going back to do some concerts. I was supposed to be doing a ring, and then that fell apart, and there's so much going on there. But I am going back this year, God willing, if everything stays the way it's supposed to do 2 concerts on the stage, and the concerts entail the immolation scene and Act 1 of Valkyria. And I'm actually more excited about that because I understudied Sieglinde at the Met 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and I never got to sing it. I understudied 2 separate productions. But yeah, there's not any particular role, to be perfectly honest. I know who he is, and I am looking specifically at the music, not the person.
Great. All right. I think it's a good time for us to open it up for questions. Now, there were some questions that came through the chat. And in the meantime, I also have to make sure that I have access to who has raised their hands. Do we have anyone who's raised their hand yet? I do have some questions. 1 second here. We had a technical difficulty before we started, and I had to change devices. So I do not have quite the same view here.
All good. I can get into the chat if that's okay, and I'll just take a look at the
if you
questions.
can, please go ahead and do that. I'm on a tablet computer, and I lost my chat. There it is.
Here we go. Okay, so the $1 million question, Pierre actually asked this. I've heard absolutely nothing. At the moment, everything seems to be moving forward. It's not just 2 performances at Bayreuth. The orchestra is going on tour, and there are supposed to be 6 performances across Europe. Who knows? Who knows? You know, I'm going to cross my fingers. You know, there isn't anyone who does what I do that does not dream of singing on that stage. And as of right now, the only time I had an opportunity to do so was the day that I wandered out with all 3 ring scores and had to sing through each of the operas for Telemann and Katharina Wagner for an audition. I'd love to do something other than that with a piano in the pit. I understand it sounds better with an orchestra. So I don't know. So if I find anything out, I will pass it on. What else do I have? How do I find the machine and the Lepage ring? They did a lot of work on it after the first round. I will tell you that when we got done with Act 1 of Götterdämmerung the last time, I came off stage and I jumped up and down. I was so excited. And they said, "What is happening?" I said, "I made it through the whole thing and I didn't fall down." Woo! And in fact, let's see if I can reach it up here. Wait, I stole this. Wait, I'll show you. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, no, you will be amused to see this because, in fact, it really should be more impressive than this. But I was told at the time they weren't going to be doing this ring again, which I don't know if that's true or not. And I wandered off and I had this on my finger and Peter Gelb said, "Where are you going with that?" And I said, "Well, you don't need it anymore." And he said, "Oh, that's true." So I will show you this hot mess. All right, hang on. Okay, so here you go. I took it because that's how I do. And now I want you to take a good look at the hot mess that is this thing. So this is pantyhose apparently, because it has to cover the LED light. I don't know if you can see that mess. Yeah. And then this is one of those stretchy watches bands. Let's just say the money went on the set. I guess. Now I gotta try and get this thing out of here again, otherwise I'll blow the battery. There it goes. But yeah, that was it actually wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And I will say that the crew at the Metropolitan Opera, I bought the entire crew bagels and coffee for the last show because my life was in their hands and they were miracle workers. So it was hard going into that one after going in for the very first time to a ring in that house on the set of the Shank one, night and day, right? And in my heart, that will always be what a ring looks like. I ended up not hating this.
Mm.
The thing about is it is a story about flawed people in the end. And it's about dialogues between people. 16 hours of dialogues between people. And if we pay attention to the text and we pay attention to the storytelling, it's kind of hard to screw it up, even if you have a set that moves around.
Mm. I was in Houston when you were there for Siegfried. I saw all four of the operas of that production. A friend of mine was Mima in that production, Rodel Roselle, and
Oh, Roro,
I came
yes.
backstage to see Roro and also to hopefully meet you. But you had to run off to New York all of a sudden because the news had broken that day that you had gotten the call. I believe it was that day to go to New York to sing Brunhilda to replace who was singing Brunhilda and was ill. Do you recall?
I don't
No,
know
I
if
don't
that was
either.
the
Well,
day I had
anyway,
to go and do it from there. But there was something that was going on.
you
If it was,
had rushed off. No.
it might have been, that was the time that the Tucker Gala was going on at the same time. So I might have been running back and forth to do both of those things.
Oh, okay. Okay. And we had another question which had to do with, I believe this was an anonymous question. Do you see that one? It's
I have
right
one
at the
from Dorothy.
top.
It's not anonymous. Unless there's something else
Oh,
here.
I have, it's only to me, that's right. Okay, so here's the question. And I know the answer to it, but do you sing in Europe? And if so, what are some differences from singing in the US?
Um, it's interesting. We have to work so hard to get people to give opera a chance here. And in Europe, I think largely because it's government subsidized and because the arts are still in schools, people are so excited about it, and people clamor for tickets still, and it is a different animal. Um, but outside of that, it is for me. It's never been about where the art happens. It's about with
Mhm.
whom it happens, and if I if I can be at home in the US and being able to make art with people that I respect, it's nice to be home and do that. So, yes, of course I'll go to Europe, but it's
Mhm.
awfully nice to do it here and be proud of American artists. So, that's a thing.
I believe Elizabeth has a question. So Elizabeth, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi,
Hi.
you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Hi, Christine.
Hi.
I'm Elizabeth Ambrose. It is really delightful to have you with us here. I'm just so excited to be able to talk to you. Yeah, the question that I had was, how did you interpret the role of Brunhilda? I mean, what sort of unique perspectives did you bring to that?
I love her. I love her so much. And what I love about it is when I started thinking about it, of course, you start to think about this and it's always spear and magic helmet and big heavy duty thing. And the more I thought about it, this is a teenager. She's a teenager who, and I mean, I have some now, so God is laughing at me, but she wants to do right by her parents, right? She's got her father who's her everything, and she wants to do right by him. And what's the way to do right by him? Well, doing what he wants when she sees that he's in a difficult situation. Well, every daughter has disobeyed her father trying to do the right thing. And every father has reacted the wrong way at some point. Every one of us has adored a parent that has fallen off of the pedestal. They all do. We all do. And when we're kids, our parents can do no wrong until the day we start to see them for who they are. And that's when we start to become adults, and that's the situation between them, you know. And I think that I think the great love story in the whole piece is not, you know, it's not Siegfried, it's Wotan and Brunhilda. And it's, you know, you can, there's million productions, we can decide what that love story means. In this family, anything goes. But I think it is about the heart connection. That's the great love story, and the forgiveness and the understanding. And to me, then I started looking and I was like, okay, well, she goes to sleep when she's what, 15? And she wakes up, still 15 technically, really. I mean, it's been a bit, but still 15. So for her, what, a day has passed? And then however long they're on a mountain before he needs to go hero again. And then that's another day. Does this take place inside of a week for her in her mind? So this is a 15-year-old who goes from being a child to being a woman who has felt everything and is ready to set the world right inside of a week. I don't think opera's given us a better character than that. That's a gift to get to sing this lady. So I don't know if anybody thinks about that the same way, but she has to have this. To me, that's why there's such crazy ups and downs in Götterdämmerung in the writing. You know, she tries to hold it together and be an adult, but she's still 15. And so these huge outbreaks happen. And then she's like, no, I'm going to pull it together because I'm a grown up and it's fine. Except I'm not, because I'm 15 and I'm really mad. Burn it all down. But do you know what I mean? To me, that's sort of how I see her.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Rick had asked a question, asking if there were any roles that I dropped because I didn't want to sing them anymore, as opposed to roles that I retired because they don't fit my voice anymore. There's no roles that I don't want to sing anymore. No, I'm lying. There's one I don't want to sing anymore. I tried desperately. I tried twice because I wanted to make sure that I was right about it the first time. I do not want to sing Norma. I don't. I do not. It's not what God gave me. If you're all looking for an analgesia, call me. So that's one that is definitely, I do not want to try that anymore. But roles I've retired, yeah, I mean, I would love to sing Handel still. And there are some Handel roles, if I sing something that's lower that don't have quite the amount of coloratura, I would love to do that. I can't really do the things that I did, things like Alcina and Armida, things like that. But one that I really wish that I could continue to do because I loved singing it because she's a blast is Rosalinda. But that watch duet kills me. So I'm out. Stephen Meg Blake asked, Siegfried's highly flawed, especially from a modern perspective. Why does Wagner present him as such a great hero? He's a bad friend, faithless lover, ungrateful child. Yes, and he's cranky and throws tantrums. There's the curse right there. Not only am I sending your nephew, he's also kind of a jerk. Ta-da! Yeah, agreed. What's interesting to me, does Wagner present him as such a great hero? Or does he present him as what we are expecting the hero to look like, when in fact the hero is somebody else? In case those of you who missed it, they're going to just juxtapose a tiny bit. So that's sort of how I feel about that one. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Someone asked if you got a chance to keep a piece of the Otto Schenk set as a souvenir.
No, I wish.
Oh, I took one with me after the tour. No, I'm just kidding.
I should have, but I do have a funny story about that one. When I was living in Washington Heights on the New York side of the George Washington Bridge, because that's where you can afford to live in New York. One of the artistic administrators at the Met had broken her wrist and she couldn't drive. And she lived in the town that I live in right now. It's 10 minutes over the bridge. So I said, we have a car. My husband is driving. We'll come pick you up. You're on duty that day. And then we'll go down and, you know, it's a 6 o'clock show. We'll pick you up at, you know, 4 o'clock. Because there was no, you know, it was the old production. All I had to do was zip into a thing and slap a wig on my head. No makeup. So good talk. We got over the bridge and there was an accident. And it was a radio broadcast. And coming back, It was a wall of traffic. And I'm sitting in the back seat, trying not to hyperventilate, calling in every 10 minutes. And it was a 6 p.m. show because, go to Dämmerung, 70
Right.
days long. And at 5:52, I said, I'm at 72nd and Riverside. I will be there in 5 minutes. They're like, we can't hold the curtain. It's a radio broadcast. I said, let me get there, just 5 minutes. Play the opening slow. I can do this. I didn't make it. They're like, we're so sorry. And my cover was out of range. And so she couldn't get there. And of course, then the subway wasn't running. Margaret Jane Ray, who was singing Gutruna, they walk back and they go, can you do this? And she goes, I don't know. I haven't done it in a really long time. They're like, you're going to have to prompt really loud. They said, okay, threw the costume on, went out there, and they were like, Rah! And then, it's right there, book, fine. She went out and she did it. And I pulled up at like 6:07, dropped the lady off, and she said, are you coming in? And I said, well, I don't see why. And I drove back home to New Jersey. The next performance, I showed up like 7 hours early for my 5-minute song. And I heard this. I thought, come in. Old regime. The door opens and Joel Volpe is standing there. He said, well, look who made it. And I went, Mr. Volpe, I am so sorry. The thing was, and there was the bridge and there was the traffic. And as I continued on, he went like this. And I said, get out of my dressing room. And he went, bye. That was the entire thing.
Oh. Did we have any other questions? Seeing if anybody has their hand raised. Laura, yes.
Hi, Christine. What a pleasure to meet you this way. I don't know how much free time you ever have with, outside of COVID, with your roles and your commitments and your training. But do you ever go to Broadway? Do you ever enjoy some of the musical theater there?
So much.
What are some of your favorites?
Yes. All of the things. I have to say, I am a Sondheim junkie. I was so mad when I didn't get a chance to go and see the Sunday in the Park with George when it came back. It's my favorite. Dated and favorite. I don't even know why. There's something about, oh God, I've got Sunday stuck in my head now. But I have so many friends who are Broadway singers. I have friends who are designing for Broadway. Recently, I just got to see Chicago. My friend, our friend Paolo Schott was on the stage, and we went to go see that. Took my daughters to go see Beetlejuice. What else did I just see? I finally saw Wicked. I was the last person on the planet not to have seen it, which was fantastic. And now I'm completely in love with Jessica Vosk. Follow her like a stalker.
Seen it, so.
It's wonderful. But what was the thing that I really wanted to see that I wasn't able to see? There were so many that were going to be going up. My friend designed the makeup and wigs for Frozen, and I haven't been able to see that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things, but I'm embarrassed to say that one of my super guilty pleasures as of late, if any of you have seen Something Rotten.
Oh,
if you haven't, it's
funny.
It's a bit like Shakespeare in Love. Like if you love Shakespeare, you got all the jokes. It's highbrow and so lowbrow at the same time. It was fantastic. So on the chance you have an opportunity to see something like that, it was so much fun. But yes, the short answer is that I love Broadway.
I just want to add, since you mentioned Sondheim, the Iowa Des Moines Opera Company did a fantastic version of A Little Night Music.
Little Night Music. I know that.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list, actually. I want that one. I want Sweeney Todd and The Witch in Into the Woods before I'm done.
And Des Moines is doing Sweeney Todd this summer. Do you have a rather challenging life in a lot of ways, and that's where the Held in Mommy Twitter handle comes from, I believe, and just in terms of balancing your personal and professional life, which just got more complex last week. Can you give us a little idea of what your secret is? How do you do that? How do you raise is it 12 and a 14-year-old? Yeah, 12 and 14-year-old girls, and yet travel all over the world and sing.
Bourbon. Not often, but sometimes.
What brand?
Yes, I mean we could have another hour on bourbons. That's sort of my. I don't drink that much, but I mean I like bourbon. Bourbon's one of those things that you don't have to have much, but there's so many different smells and tastes, and I like bourbon. Yeah, it is challenging. It is so unbelievably challenging. And listen, I thought my career was done before my voice changed. And I was content. I didn't expect to have the career that I had. I always wanted to be a mother. I never wanted to be an opera singer. And I thought, okay, God gave me this gift and I've had that for the last 10 years and that is a miracle. And maybe it's just time for me to get to have the rest of my life now. And so I dated. I never dated. Who had time to date? I had my blinders on. I was training. And I dated. There was, it's not so easy to meet folks when you're in the middle of rehearsals. So, I went the online route and I met some characters. We could go another hour on that. But I met my husband, who is wonderful. And, we talked early on about how does this function. And he said, listen, I know that you are frustrated at the moment. And I think that if you stop, you will be sad because you will miss it. And I think that people will miss you. But if you are done, I am here for it. It's fine. And, I thought that's, reverse psychology, and that's not going to work. Totally worked. So that's annoying. But, we had our girls, and they are the thing that I am the most proud of in my entire life. There is nothing that I have ever done on stage and nothing that I will do on stage that will take precedence over those girls. They are amazing. And that has been the greatest gift of my life. It's hard. It's hard. I have traveled, especially in the last 2 years before all this happened, far more than I had ever expected to. And in a way, I can't believe I'm saying this time has been a blessing. It has really made me realize how much I need to carefully choose, and that I don't need to do everything, that I miss the connection with my family, that I want to be here for my kids. And especially now that my girls are, don't tell them they're not quite teenagers yet, but they think they are. This is the time when they say they don't need me, but they need me the most. I mean, who's going to screw up their lives if not me right now? So, I thought about it a lot, and I realized that what's the after? What does that look like for me? Every singer thinks about this. If they tell you that they don't, they're lying. At some point, I don't know if it's, when you're 25 or you're 57 or 65, the rubber bands don't do what you want them to do anymore. Our bodies age. That's what happens. But my rubber bands are working at the moment. Knock on everything. But I just realized that, with this, people will say crisis. It's a crisis. With everything that has happened, things have changed. And coming back, it will be slightly more difficult to do the repertoire that I do, simply for spacing. It's expensive. It will take time it will come back, but it'll take time to come back. And fortunately or unfortunately for me, this has happened at at what should have been my 5 top years, which is disappointing in a way, but it made me think about the after. So my after, I have never wanted to leave the opera house. I don't know what I would do with myself. I feel like my soul would just hurt too much. I'd always planned on heading to the other side of the desk at some point. I have to say that, I wander around with my Beverly Sills book. She's been a huge influence. And I grew up at New York City Opera, and I knew what that was. And I understood what it meant for American singers. And I wanted to do that someday.
Mhm.
And so just after The Ring was over in New York in 19, I got on a plane and went to Detroit. I have family out there, and I took Wayne Brown out to lunch and I said, so how can I help you so that I can start to learn now? I'm not planning on, imagine if I had actually known what I know now. So I'm not planning on sort of walking away from anything, but is there something that I can do to be helping your company while I'm starting to learn about I know things, but there are things that I'm not going to be able to learn unless I learn on my feet. How can we help each other? This conversation was ongoing since then. And a year later, well, not even a year later, it was, yeah, I mean, COVID hit. And, you know, the arts world shut down. And we were chatting slightly before we opened up the room to everybody. And one of the things that you said is it seems like a crazy time to do this, to go into administration. I will challenge you to say that this is exactly the right time to go into administration. The thing is, things have been slightly broken, I think, in our industry for a really long time, and we have no choice but to rebuild from the bottom up right now. We have to rethink everything. We have to rethink things financially. We have now been opened up to, look at us. We're all over the country. We're all over the world. You know, we are speaking to each other digitally. There are streaming services. There is a new way to connect with audiences that will never go away. It will never replace live performance. But we now have these two things simultaneously existing. So if now is not the time to get in, when we're getting to redefine what we are and rebuild it, when is? So I'm actually incredibly excited about getting in on the bottom floor right now.
Time. Yeah, it's interesting because my background is in software and so on a tech side, involved with performing arts. And what I've seen in the last year is a lot of technology has just accelerated trends that were already there.
Right.
Often in many cases, they were already there, but they needed actually a kick in the rear to really, and unfortunately, COVID gave us all quite a kick in the rear. But I think it's wonderful that you've got this opportunity, and I did not know that you have family there, which is terrific. My friend Rick Johnson, who I worked with at the Smith Center for the Performing Arts in Las Vegas, has posters from Michigan Opera Theater behind him. Hi, Rick. Miss you.
They've been on my office wall since 1982, wherever I worked.
Oh my goodness.
We helped open the first performing arts center and it cost $500 million, and it looks at in Las Vegas. When I started, I was the 19th employee, and Rick was the CFO. I was director of patron services. And I think my first week, I discovered that Rick and I share an absolute passion for Wagner and Strauss. And Rick, we had this lofted office, and so you could always hear what everyone else was doing in this old bread bakery that had been converted into offices because there were no ceilings, and you could always hear from the other corner of the building strains of Wagner or Strauss emanating from Rick's office. So we're actually a little bit past time. I have a funny feeling we could talk long into the night, especially if bourbon was involved.
Lois does have her hand up, though, if you would like to ask one more thing, if that's okay.
Lois does, yes. I was just going to look for any other questions. So Lois, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I know I'd regret it if I just didn't shout out to you. I'm from Long Island.
Where?
Well, from Queens. When it was there, from Union Turnpike and 193rd Street.
All right, well, you're cooler than me because originally I'm from North Conduit and 118th.
Oh my God.
So.
Oh my God. Well, I didn't know if it was just that drew me to you, but I've been following you on Twitter. I write about opera. I'm a fan. I loved Elektra when I
Oh,
saw it in San
good.
Francisco. I live in San Francisco area now, and you're just wonderful. And
Oh,
I love watching you, hearing you. I love what you said about Brunhilda. San Francisco just had a virtual ring.
I know, I watched it. I
What?
wanted Irina
Yes,
not to sound great, but she's saying that C at the end of the Dawn duet, and I wrote her and I was like, you,
yes.
it was
Well,
great.
your comments about to Grace Bumbry were also terrific.
Oh my gosh, I was
I know.
fangirling like a freak. Oh my,
I know.
Grace Bumbry, come on.
I know it. You were fantastic when I saw you long ago. I practically jumped out of my chair.
Oh,
So
thanks.
thank you for changing your career direction in the singing. I didn't see the early things, but I
It was
followed
okay,
you.
I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, right. And I'm very touched by your comment about Klingenstein, since I'm one of
too.
those.
Yeah, well, apparently we are everywhere.
Yes.
But the thing that's good is that my mother's family is Sicilian Catholic. My father's family is German Jewish. I have all of the guilt. So, woo!
Well, good luck with it. And as we say in Yiddish, "Geh gesundheit."
I'm going to
which
try.
means-
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to me.
Pleasure.
And we did have a comment from someone that the technology has just been so wonderful to increase access. And, this is a great
Christine Goerke.
opportunity to mention that one of the things that we've really enjoyed here at our Wagner Society is we've been able to talk to people like you or like Will Berger. We're going to be talking to Andy Whitfield in May about Wagner as a revolutionary. These are all people who don't live locally in the Twin Cities. And, Francesca Zambello, when Francesca was here a year and a half ago for a production of hers at Minnesota Opera, a non-Wagner production, we were able to leverage the fact that she was here and have her come and talk to us. But the technology's made it possible for all of us to connect, as you said, all over the world. And the streaming opportunities, there was so much Wagner streaming this weekend. And I was committed to rewatch the San Francisco Ring, but there's so much Wagner streaming this weekend, I couldn't possibly keep up. And I'm retired. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't retired.
But isn't it great? I mean, it's hard to say, let's find the silver lining in the last year and a half. It's been so much. It's been so much. We have all lost so much, whether it's people or things or a year of our lives. We could go on and on about that. And I had 2 months of absolute paralysis when this started. And I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't hear music. I am in a room that's probably about 12 by 12 right now. That's where my piano is. You don't want to hear me in a 12 by 12 room, but it's a small house. I have a door on it. I'm very happy. But this door stayed shut. I wanted nothing to do with this room. And then my friend asked if I would help her and just listen to something that she was going to be doing virtually. And I said, I don't even know how to do that. She said, well, we can use Zoom. What Zoom? Okay, do we all remember we're all saying this last March? What's Zoom? Zoom's the thing that has all of our money. Yeah. That's what Zoom is. But all of a sudden, I was reconnected with people. I was reconnected with music. I sat here thinking, there are kids who can't go back to school. There are students who are about to do things and they're not doing anything, and I'm sitting home. And I started coaching like 10 to 20 hours a week. And that connection kept me connected to the music. And the streaming of everything has kept all of us connected to what we love. In a way, it's kind of a miracle. And it's shown us how much we lean into music to lift us up, to help us feel bad. I mean, we can all name the piece that when we're feeling super sad, that's the one that goes on. Mahler gets me down, and if I want to do it, I'll put it on. But it's a miracle that we have this and this connection. Even though we can't reach out and touch each other, we're still doing it,
Yeah. Well, I promised a few housekeeping items, but I think what I'll be doing is sending an email. I know I have to send an email anyway. The one that I wanted to make sure I mentioned to everyone is that there will be a link to a very brief survey in the email. You'll get a follow-up email from me probably tonight. Please do complete that survey because we're really in the process of developing our virtual content. This is our third, actually, I lied, fourth event with virtual content, if you include one we did last year. So we're relatively new to the game, our Wagner Society is, and so your feedback is really important. And we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel right now, or at least I think it's a light. And I don't think it's a train. I think it's really, truly the light at the end of the tunnel. But these virtual events are here to stay. We will always, from now on, have some content, some events rather, that are virtual because we can do things like this that we couldn't otherwise do. And we'll still also have in-person events as we've had traditionally for our 22 years in history. But this has been just such a joy to be able to talk to you today. You're such a dear to spend so much time with us when you have so much going on right now. And it's really been terrific to have you here with us. So
pleasure.
Thank you so much
for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Everyone have a wonderful week. Enjoy spring in Minnesota if you're here. And we'll all talk soon. Take care.
See you all soon. Thanks. Bye.